Yes, sir.
And the first thing I want to say to you, Taffy, is you talked about a miracle that happened to you. No miracle happened to you. And that was a misdirection.
Yeah. Okay.
The miracles happened to the saints,
Yes.
but nothing happened to you. And so you kind of led us down a false path to begin with, or you used the wrong word there.
Yeah.
But that's part of where the development kind of got, because you only had one point, and that point was that the saints are incorruptible, and it's a real thing,
Yeah.
which is a very interesting thing
Yeah.
to hear. From the point of view, however, of a speech contest, it doesn't have the same effect of elevating the audience. And this is, as I say, the contest is a different thing. You were a little too dedicated to looking here at the screen and broke eye contact, which wasn't good. And you didn't really have the kind of vocal dynamics you could have because the speech was on a single subject and without the variation. I'm not saying it was a bad speech, I'm just trying to give you a feeling for what
Yes,
it was
yes.
at.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, and your interaction with the audience, ask us questions, was great.
Yes.
But you want to make sure that you're working more constantly looking at us, and as much as you can, and you can't be perfect. If you can gesture at the screen while you're still looking at us, that would strengthen you a lot further. But, so thank you, and again, I
Yeah.
say I'm favorably impressed people, don't. Owen,
Yes.
first of all, people can't remember 10 things. Seriously, if you want to give a speech, and this is part of the development thing, as I said, I was going through the whole. People can remember about 3 things. So you need to pull it down to 3 main, they can give subpoints within that. But particularly for a contest speech, you need to pull it down to 3. I would have suggested a lot more examples as you went through it. And you could have worked, for example, you'd mentioned Napoleon. How did Napoleon do each of these things? Not just one. But it would have personified it, which would have made it stronger for us. That said, your use of language was wonderful. I mean, you really did a wonderful job of language. You scored, because as I said, I scored it very high on that. Your language was great. Be careful, however, that you do not keep doing the same gestures. And you reach your point. Now, I'm a singer. I sing with 2 different musical groups. And so I will sometimes use that as part of my description, folks. There's a point where you are keeping time, and the gestures should be expressive. You also have, from the point of view of a contest speech, you need to set yourself up again for more vocal variety. And fair or not, in a contest, they're going to ding you for being tied to a lectern. So be aware of that.
Thank you.
There was one other, let me just a quick, my notes are incredibly small here, but expressive. Yeah, in terms of vocal whatever, there are places where you still could have been a little stronger. You try and you fail. You try again. Fail better. See how that extra punch on just the one word can make it much more evocative? You miss those opportunities. And I really say to people very strongly, vocal variety isn't just volume, it's pace. And really properly done pace varies within sentences, not just between sentences or tempo. Again, in general, I liked it, but you've got to pull those things down to work well. Now, Kelly, your speech was particularly stellar. I'm going to start off right there. She did one thing which everybody should learn from. She gestured with her body. So many people just gesture with their hands. And I'm not just talking the big things where she was miming, which is always great, but she would talk about being, upset or, and that really, first of all, because you were talking about movement, it was thematically appropriate, but it wasn't just there. Your whole body gave us a feeling, and it was very solid and real on that score. You made yourself vulnerable. Audiences love to hear vulnerability because it makes you real. And you did it well. You did it to the point, and I don't know how much it was that strong for you or how much you were trying to give us a feeling, but I really felt the vulnerability. When you talked about going dark, I saw it, I felt it. It really was wonderfully expressive on that score. Your language was nice and clean. You didn't use as many exotic words as Owen did. I'm bad with names, folks. If I got a name wrong, just forgive me. But each word you used was proper, well done, and clean. So it was very, very nice on that. So I warned Kelly, in an actual speech contest, if you mention another speaker, a prior speaker, you will be disqualified. Now that's a speech contest rule, and it has to do with the fact that it affects the way that those people are seen, but it also gives an advantage because the first person can't talk about anybody else, and the last person can talk about everybody. And each speech should be in isolation, and that's very important. So that would have disqualified you. I did wonder, not with Taffy, but I did wonder with both Owen and Kelly, how long were your speeches?
I had 12 to 15, but I said it was carte blanche where we more or less we're just gonna give the speaker the time to.
Okay.
Mine was about 11, well, it varied some when I practiced.
Well, I
it,
do
but
not
roughly
believe-
I
11
practiced
and
it
a
as
half.
12 to 13.
Okay. I do not believe in club contests in cutting people off. But realistically, you have 5 to 7 minutes, or you will, 7.5 minutes, that's the 30-second grace
Yeah,
period.
Right.
But you must be at least 4.5 minutes. They will show you a green light at 5, which is when you made the official minimum. Red light at 7, and at 7.5 minutes, they cut you off.
Right.
And when I say they cut you off, Lance Armstrong, who was a world champion of public speaking and is part of District 100, his first speech at the international level went for 7 minutes and 31 seconds. He was disqualified.
The Lance Armstrong?
That's what I was
Just
thinking.
1 second.
Was it Lance Armstrong?
The
The
bicycle.
bicycle record.
Toastmaster.
I'm sorry, my hearing is bad. You're gonna have to.
Oh, okay.
He said
That's what I thought,
be Lance Armstrong, the bicyclist.
Oh,
I never heard the speech. I just know that I know that he had a catchphrase ka-ching, and that's all I know about it because I heard someone else refer to it. But I also know 37-31, and he lost. He gave that exact same speech internationally later, came in within 7:30, and he won hands down.
Wow.
So if you guys are preparing for a contest,
true that.
keep that very, very seriously.
Is there a specific time for competition?
Yes.
5 to 7, right?
And if a competition speech is for the international contest, is between 5 minutes and 7 minutes with a 30-second grace period on either side. So you must go for 4 minutes and 30 seconds, or you will be disqualified. You must stop by 7 minutes and 30 seconds, or you will be disqualified. And that is absolute. Now, in the actual contest judging, the judges do not pay attention to the time. The timer does. So the judge, and I've been there, I've said, this was clearly on the points value, the #1 best speech. And the timer said 7 minutes, 31 seconds. And I said, speech doesn't count. It doesn't matter how good the score is. So, and again, I'm talking to you right now from a contest
Sure.
point of view here.
Absolutely.
And as I said to Kelly, because I told her about the mentioning other people earlier, in a normal meeting, talking about the people before you builds rapport. It's a good thing to do, but it's a contest disqualification. Now, I am a DTM. I think you all know what that is at this point.
Yeah.
It means don't time me.
Sort of, yeah.
DTMs are notorious for the fact that we speak too long. We want to give, but, you know, the rule is for a contest, you've got to be tied very tightly there. The other thing, the voice was good, the development of the speech, you could have been a little bit cleaner on your development as one point to the other. And Owen, your points were all in isolation, which there were things you needed to say, which is fine, but be aware of that in terms of getting points. You know, I would have given you a fine. But I wouldn't give you the top score because of the development thing.
Sure.
And so you gotta be careful. And again, I'll say to everybody, just in general, be sure to cut out anything that isn't necessary to your speech. Now, Taffy, you talked about where you were born. Builds rapport in the club, but it's not part of your speech. It's part of your self-introduction. So you need to you want to talk about incorruptibility in a speech content, particularly, but in general, you want to be, light on the other stuff. You want to talk about incorruptibility, so what you saw. Now you can kind of set the image, but the desert, being born in Nazareth, which, bingo, you're talking a religious speech, I'm hearing Nazareth, I'm saying, oh my goodness. And it's Christmas time besides, I know where no, he's not. Don't tell us that your speech is part of a speech project. Granted, Toastmasters love to hear things about Toastmasters,
Sure.
but that certainly isn't a part of how to be a leader.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, whereas again, Kelly talked directly. She went into it. Now she didn't just drop us in the middle of the whole horror story, but we knew from the beginning where she was going, and so that's kind of my general feeling here. And again, I've oriented myself towards talking about contest rules here, and a different set of, different evaluation. I might work differently, but yes, sir.
Oh, good question. Like, I've noticed that, for most of the speakers, they often start off the speech with something like, good evening, Toastmasters and distinguished guests. Is that something people actually need to start off with, or is it just something people just happen to use all the time?
The average human being in today's world has about a 3-second attention span. You've just spent 5 seconds and you've already lost them. Everybody in Toastmasters does that, and it's stupid. The one thing, and I'm not a late night TV person, learn from Saturday Night Live, cold opens. Get right into it, grab them right away. The first sentence, even the first word in some cases. Now, I wouldn't do it this way, but just as an example, Taffy. Death and decay happens to everyone. Or does it? See, now that's a grabber opening. Yeah. Death, decay. Oh my gosh, he's got me. I was born in Nazareth.
This is good.
That's good, yeah. We need to
Awesome, yeah.
Yes.
I also have a question, since I don't know anything about speech competitions and hearing the representatives. So something like leading people through an exercise. for example, I asked you all to close your eyes and led you through this process, is that something that's acceptable in a competition or not?
Thank you, because that was, I thought about that and I did thought. Yes, leading them through an exercise works at the beginning level, the area contest, possibly at the division. Becomes, as you go further up, you'll refine your presentation. And at the district level, district level, you can't count on it as much. But don't ever ask people to close their eyes. In a speech contest. Because when you do that, they're not focused on you. Some people don't feel comfortable with their eyes closed.
Sure, I almost said if you feel
Yeah.
safe, so I
Yeah.
probably should have said that. But then again, do
And
you
I will
really
tell you
want them completely focused on you the whole time? Don't you want to give them an experience?
You do, as I say, I'm not saying you don't do an exercise.
Uh-huh,
It's gotta be a little shorter,
okay.
it's gotta be clear when it ends. I missed it, but asking them to close their eyes is where you've lost their attention.
Okay.
I can put my hand on my stomach and my chest and feel my breathing while I'm still looking. I can come up with a color. If I wanna close my eyes myself, that's okay. But, so there was nothing wrong with your exercise per se, except for the closing your eyes, because that builds a bit of a distance. Always remember as a speaker, you want them fundamentally to be listening to you. Something I'll say that absolutely will offend a whole bunch of people is, you never want your audience thinking. You want them experiencing. And you want to be the focus. Now, your exercise is fine because they're experiencing as they do this. And Taffy, what you did, where you had us fill in the blank, you still had us focused. You know? They are what? And we're looking at your point, incorruptible. That kept us engaged and that kept us, so that was good. But you want to be careful that they don't say, and I was just using this as another example in another club. We were talking about profanity. And they said, why does Toastmasters have down on profanity? And I say, because if I swear, people are going to focus on the word, not what I'm saying. And that loses their attention on me, and I want it on me. Again, as I said again, if I'm talking to dock workers and I use only clean language, they're going to say, who is this guy? He's a suit. So that they'll be thinking about your language in a different way. It won't be thinking about how rude you were. They'll be thinking about how unreal you were. And generally in Toastmasters, you're not talking with dock workers, so don't take that too much to heart. But be aware of it with any audience.
My question to you is, if Kelly take her speech and define it more, she could use it more times in the competition, like she used 1, 2, 3 times in different competition, the same speech,
Okay.
define it better?
Yes. Basically, the rule is, I really wasn't expecting to give a lecture today, guys. I apologize. I hope it's
You're lucky.
okay.
That's great. Okay.
The rule is you can give the same speech up until the final round of the international competition. So this year, the final round will be held, I think it'll be the second or maybe the third round of competition in Philadelphia. But you
Welcome to Delphi.
Wow. Get a Philly cheesesteak while you're
and I'm sorry, normally it's an exotic, not normally, about half the time it's in exotic locations. This year it was actually in Anaheim,
Not bad.
because that's basically where Toastmasters was founded.
Right.
But
Yeah, Philadelphia doesn't sound very international.
But
It's for other
at least if you're in Philadelphia, you won't have to buy a passport.
Sure.
But yes, you can do the same one. Now, the final speech has to be new. But other than that, you can give the same speech and refine it and refine it and refine it. And I don't know if they'll do it this year because the club is having evolution issues. But Axe Toastmasters, which is out of Pasadena, used to, and has every year so far, so they probably will do it, but I can't promise yet. Between the area contest, and there's a 2-week between the area and the division level contest, ACTS will have a workshop where they will help you work in real detail on your speech, and everybody can shine up. I mean, they can take 10 people or so, can show up, and they will help you improve your speech, your chance of winning the division, and also in the general world. Historically, people who have gone to that workshop have won the division 9 times out of 10. Not 100, but 9 times out of 10. They have an incredible track record. They're really good people. They're really good, even though I haven't been one of their evaluators. Primarily because as chief judge, I couldn't. I was part of the club and I did do it for a while, but as chief judge, I couldn't. Yes.
Is it appropriate to ask questions at the beginning when the speech starts to be an attention grabber? Or no?
Asking questions can be a great attention grabber.
But then you have to get answers, right? And then it's
You
gonna take
want
time away.
fast questions, or you want to not wait to listen to their answers.
Is it AXE, A-X-E, or
ACTS.
AS.
Ask. A-S-K.
I'm sorry, the club is ACTS,
ACTS.
Advanced Communication Toastmasters. That's not what it stands for anymore. And the S was Speech Bureau. So it's A period C period T period S period. And I'm the only person who puts the periods in there because I'm anal retentive.
You had a question, Ben?
Yes.
Yes, when it comes to notes, or like Toffee was reading at obviously his video, how much can we do of that? How much is appropriate or inappropriate when it comes to our
PowerPoint.
notes?
Okay. With respect to the rules, there are no rules against the use of notes. That said, in a real world speaking situation, the use of notes is fine as long as you are not reading your notes instead of looking at people. To glance down is fine in the real world, but Toastmasters tends to seriously frown on it and somehow feel that you're less professional if you look at notes. And the judges will, even though there's no rule here, the judges will somehow find a reason to look down on you for using notes as notes. Now, what Taffy did was different. Taffy used a display. And I did say that he looked too much at them, which was a problem. But the concept of having the pictures there, and he wants to show us pictures of incorruptible bodies, there's no way to do that other than, because it just says, and the body was unbelievable. It was uncorrupted. It actually looked like, that may be wonderful vocal variety, but if I'm seeing a body that's 500 years old right there in front of me, that's got a lot more power, and humans are fundamentally visual people. So the visuals that he used was important, and sometimes you don't want to get carried away on it. And this is one of my pet peeves about PowerPoint. I'll just say it in general. People tend to read their PowerPoint notes. They should be shot for that. When I teach a class, the first thing I say is, burn your PowerPoint. It's actually it's an exaggeration, but to look periodically and say, show us the pictures, and to have a word, a keyword. When I do use PowerPoint, which is incredibly rare, when I do use PowerPoint, I tend to use evocative pictures. So, for example, when I'm talking about working together as a team, my PowerPoint slide is a picture of a bunch of guys playing rugby. I know I'm talking about people sitting in a boardroom and working whatever, but I don't say work as a team because cooperation leads to, I say work as a team, and I show a picture, people say, oh yeah, we know how a rugby team works. And that gets things through. So it's fine, but I say, don't read your notes, and you glance at them, but you don't read them. However, in a contest, I'd avoid notes because that's what the judges are biased towards. But to have them on the screen as a PowerPoint, as Taffy did, is fine as long as you are not reading the notes there. And again, sometimes it's absolutely necessary because those incorruptible pictures, they gave credibility. You could not have described to me a 186-year dead woman and got me to believe me nearly as much as that picture. Even if that picture was photoshopped, I would have bought it. But
Any other questions?
anyone else?
Going once?
Thank you. Thank you.